Have you ever asked yourself why so many lives are spent chasing dreams that dissolve like smoke in the wind, while others, no more talented, no more fortunate, grasp the impossible and make it inevitable? Look inward now. Ask yourself, do you truly understand what it means to act as if failure is impossible, or have you been fooling yourself with half-hearted attempts, timid actions, and whispered excuses that only serve to lull your fear into complacency? The world has trained you to believe that failure is real, tangible, a specter that hovers over every decision you make. You have been conditioned to hesitate, to doubt, to measure every step against a ledger of imagined impossibilities. But what if that ledger is a fabrication, a prison of your own mind? What if failure exists only when you acknowledge it, only when you allow fear, indecision, and lack of purpose to take root and bloom within you? Close your eyes in the theater of your mind and consider this. Every individual who has carved their name into history's immovable stones understood a singular truth. Success begins in the mind as absolute certainty before it manifests in the world outside. You cannot stumble into triumph. You cannot negotiate with destiny while standing half in doubt. Every achievement, every act of greatness was first conceived in the mind as inevitable, unyielding, unavoidable. You must not only think it, you must believe it with every cell of your being, as though the universe itself bends and shifts only to accommodate the certainty of your purpose. The question now is brutal and unavoidable. If you continue to act as if failure is possible, how can you ever hope to succeed? Consider your own hesitation, the quiet lies you tell yourself. Perhaps you have a goal, a dream, a vision that flickers in your imagination, but dies at the first sign of resistance. Perhaps you allow circumstances, opinions, or fears to dictate your pace, your courage, your choices. This is the subtle poison of a mind untrained in the laws of success. Napoleon Hill taught that the mind is a fertile field. It will produce either weeds of fear or the fruit of unrelenting desire, depending on what you water, nurture, and feed with attention. If you constantly cultivate doubt, indecision, and fear, then failure is not just possible, it becomes inevitable. If you cultivate faith, absolute clarity of purpose, and relentless persistence, then failure becomes inconceivable, a phantom unable to take root in your consciousness. This is not a theory, this is a law. Now imagine for a moment that failure is not real, that it exists only in the minds of those who surrender to it. What would you attempt? What risks would you take? What heights could you scale if the word impossible were erased from your vocabulary, replaced instead with unwavering certainty? This is no exercise in empty optimism. It is a surgical, relentless, and uncompromising discipline of thought. You must condition your mind, sculpt it with the tools of burning desire, definiteness of purpose, and unshakable faith. Each thought, each moment must be forged as if failure were not an option, because in reality, it is not. There is no halfway. There is no margin for self-deception. The mind that flinches at possibility, that entertains doubt even in the quietest corners of thought, cannot command reality, it can only react to it. But the mind that acts, breathes, and moves as though failure is impossible commands a force greater than circumstance, greater than resistance, greater than any opposing power in the universe. Your burning desire must become a furnace in which every hesitation is incinerated. Desire is not a fleeting fancy, it is the engine of inevitability. Without it, faith becomes weak, autosuggestion becomes meaningless, and persistence falters before the first storm. But when desire is fused with purpose, crystallized in the mind as absolute certainty, it becomes unstoppable. Every obstacle becomes a teacher, every setback a necessary course correction, and every moment of doubt a cue to reaffirm your inner authority over your destiny. Imagine yourself in this state, not as a temporary condition, but as a permanent, inescapable reality. Feel it, the thought of failure cannot survive in this environment. It is smothered before it even arises. Acting as if failure is impossible is not arrogance. It is discipline. It is the recognition that your inner world shapes the outer world with inexorable precision. Consider faith, the unseen force that Hill called the very bridge between desire and achievement. Faith is not blind optimism. It is not wishful thinking. It is the mental mastery of belief so absolute that no external circumstance can shake it. When you act with faith, you are literally engaging the invisible forces that govern all outcomes. Faith, strengthened through repetition, autosuggestion, and unwavering focus, transforms the intangible into the inevitable. Each time you repeat your purpose in the quiet of your mind, you strengthen neural pathways that align your thought with action, your belief with behavior, your inner certainty with outer reality. Failure ceases to exist here, because every action is an expression of an internal law of success that cannot be denied, cannot be diverted, cannot be destroyed. Now confront your fear. Fear is the silent assassin of dreams, the subtle whisper that makes impossibility seem real, the companion of hesitation. Fear manifests as procrastination, doubt, and indecision. It lurks in the shadows of every choice you make. But to act as if failure is impossible, you must master fear, not by ignoring it, but by understanding it, naming it, dissecting it, and stripping it of authority, O.V. Your actions. Fear is a signal, a guidepost showing you where your mind has yet to assert control. Every time you feel fear, confront it with clarity and purpose. Understand that fear is only as powerful as your willingness to entertain it. Treat fear as a tool, a teacher, a necessary adversary in the cultivation of mental strength. Do not give it dominion over you. Persistence is the lifeblood of inevitability. No plan, no vision, no desire achieves permanence without relentless action. Persistence is not mere stubbornness. It is the conscious, disciplined continuation of purpose, regardless of circumstance, outcome, or resistance. Those who achieve extraordinary success do not act only when it is convenient or comfortable. They act when doubt looms, when obstacles rise, when every rational argument screams retreat. They act because their inner world has declared failure impossible, and no external force can contradict this internal law. Each setback is an opportunity to refine strategy, deepen understanding, and reaffirm commitment. Acting as if failure is impossible is the cultivation of persistence so absolute that even temporary defeat becomes a stepping stone toward ultimate triumph. Decision, too, is a hidden master of destiny. Indecision breeds hesitation, hesitation breeds fear, fear births failure. The decisive mind acts swiftly, with clarity and confidence, rooted in purpose and fueled by desire. Each choice made with precision, without doubt, is a reinforcement. T of the internal law that failure is a fiction. When you decide, you commit your mind, body, and soul to a course of action with unwavering intent. The universe responds not to passive contemplation, but to the force of decisiveness aligned with the inner certainty of success. Imagination, the crucible of creativity, is the mental workshop where desire takes form and purpose becomes strategy. It is not idle daydreaming. It is the disciplined application of mental vision to the realization of possibility. When you imagine success as certain, as unavoidable, you provide the mind with a template upon which reality can align. Every obstacle is met not with fear or complaint, but with innovative action derived from the controlled, purposeful use of imagination. As you hear these words, feel the weight of your own inner law of cause and effect. Every thought you entertain, every fear you indulge, every hesitation you permit is a choice that either strengthens failure or annihilates it. Acting as if failure is impossible is the deliberate, conscious, and relentless cultivation of thought, emotion, and action in alignment with the inner laws that Napoleon Hill revealed. This is no surface-level encouragement. This is a mental warfare, a psychological campaign waged in the quiet of the mind, where victories are earned before they manifest outside. Now confront the ultimate truth. Success is not found in external approval, in wealth, in recognition, or in circumstance. It is found. G, first in the mind. It is the internal conquest of doubt, fear, indecision, and half-hearted effort. Every achievement begins with this victory over the self, with the unshakable belief that failure is not an option. The mind that achieves this state becomes an engine of inevitability. The body and the world merely follow. The invisible forces that govern success respond to certainty, to desire, to persistent, disciplined action. They respond to those who act as if failure is impossible, who cultivate faith, discipline, and purpose with meticulous attention. You are now standing at the threshold of this reality. The choice is yours. Will you continue to flirt with the possibility of failure, to hedge your bets against doubt, to act tentatively as though success might evade you? Or will you commit absolutely and irrevocably to the internal law that failure is impossible, to the forging of a mind so disciplined, so certain, so relentless that destiny itself cannot resist its claim? The path is not easy. It demands mental rigor, emotional mastery, and unflinching persistence. It demands that every fear be faced, every doubt annihilated, every hesitation transformed into decisive action. This is the beginning of the journey. The first ignition of a force within that, if maintained, will render failure impossible in your life, in your mind, and eventually in the world, that bows to the certainty of your purpose. Now that you have confronted the essential question of whether allure is a truth you must accept or a fiction you can destroy, let us descend deeper into the mind, into the furnace where desire is transformed into certainty, where faith becomes the architecture of inevitability, and where persistence forges the path that leads beyond the reach of hesitation and doubt. Desire is the spark, the original flame from which all achievement ignites. But desire alone, untamed and unstructured, is a flickering candle in the wind, fragile, vulnerable, and insufficient. To act as if failure is impossible, desire must become obsession. It must consume every idle thought, dominate every quiet moment, and define the boundaries of your imagination. Only when desire is absolute can it compel faith to follow, compelling your mind to operate with the inexorability of a machine tuned to a single objective, success. This is the crucible of personal mastery, where the weak wither and the resolute rise. Faith, then, is the unseen energy that converts desire into action and eventual outcome. But let us not mistake faith for blind hope. Faith is a discipline, a relentless conviction that refuses to acknowledge impossibility. It is the practice of convincing the subconscious mind that the outcome is already secured, even when the external world insists otherwise. Each thought you impress upon yourself through deliberate reflection, through repetition, through auto-suggestion, solidifies neural pathways that align your conscious and subconscious with your ultimate purpose. This is no trivial exercise. It is the deliberate engineering of your inner world to shape the external one. The mind, after all, obeys not the laws of probability, but the laws of certainty impressed upon it. You must impress upon your mind a reality in which failure does not exist, a vision so vivid and undeniable that every fiber of your being aligns to bring it into the tangible world. Consider the process of auto-suggestion, the mechanism by which faith is strengthened, doubt is destroyed, and desire is internalized into an immovable law of the subconscious. Each time you speak to yourself with precision, clarity, and intensity, you are planting seeds in the fertile soil of your mind. These seeds grow silently, invisibly, until they emerge as action, as decision, as accomplishment. This is the quiet battlefield where victories are first won. While others drift in indecision, you must speak to yourself with the voice of authority, with the conviction of one who has already achieved. You must affirm your purpose, visualize your outcome, and discipline your thoughts with a rigor that leaves no room for hesitation. Failure cannot survive in this environment, for the mind has been restructured to accept only one eventuality: success. Persistence is the muscle that carries the invisible victories of mind into the arena of reality. Desire and faith may set the course, but without persistence, the plan dissolves. Persistence is not mere repetition or stubbornness. It is the conscious decision to advance relentlessly, to continue when every external signal screams retreat, to act decisively even when uncertainty presses heavily upon you. Those who fail do so not because their goals were impossible, but because they allowed the mind to waver, to entertain doubt, to yield temporarily to circumstance. Acting as if failure is impossible demands persistence so absolute that the mind becomes impervious to discouragement, to delay, and to disappointment. Each setback becomes a necessary correction, each obstacle a signal to refine your method, each delay an opportunity to deepen your mastery over thought and action. Now reflect on the invisible mental forces that govern all outcomes. Success is never a mere consequence of chance or talent alone. It is the result of unseen alignments between thought, emotion, belief, and action. The laws governing these alignments are as precise as they are relentless. Every choice you make, every emotion you cultivate, every belief you allow either reinforces your inevitability or undermines it. Acting as if failure is impossible is the conscious calibration of these forces, the deliberate shaping of your inner reality to command your outer experience. Here, the subtle becomes decisive. The whispers of doubt, the flickers of fear, the seeds of hesitation, each must be observed, analyzed, and neutralized. The mind that entertains these without correction is a mind that invites failure, the mind that acts with total. Internal authority, however, bends circumstance, challenges, and even resistance to its will. Decision, often underestimated, is the hidden engine of success. Indecision is the ally of failure. Every moment of hesitation is a moment surrendered to circumstance, a moment in which the mind allows the possible intrusion of defeat. The decisive mind, acting as if failure is impossible, moves swiftly, with clarity and commitment. It does not seek permission from the world, nor does it measure its steps against the fears of others. It decides, acts, and reinforces its purpose through continuous alignment of thought and behavior. Every decision is a brick in the fortress of inevitability, every action a reinforcement of the law that you control the outcome. Imagination, the creative workshop of the mind, is where the abstract is rendered concrete. It is the domain in which you can rehearse triumph, anticipate challenges, and engineer solutions before the world imposes them. When you act as if failure is impossible, imagination is no idle pastime. It is your laboratory, your strategy room, your command center. You visualize, you experiment, you plan with precision. You foresee obstacles not as threats, but as opportunities to exercise mastery. Imagination, disciplined and purposeful, is the lens through which desire and faith are converted into action. Without it, action is blind. With it, action becomes unstoppable. And now consider the subtle but profound law of emotional equilibrium. Success demands not only intellectual clarity, but emotional mastery. Every fear must be confronted, every doubt analyzed, every impatience subdued. Emotional instability is the silent assassin of inevitability, the hidden force that allows failure to creep where thought alone cannot. Acting as if failure is impossible requires a mind discipline not only in thought but in feeling. Calm, focused, unwavering emotional control allows persistence to be applied consistently, decision to be executed decisively, and imagination to operate with precision. The mind and heart must move in unison, each reinforcing the other, creating a field of internal authority in which failure has no entry. Let us now examine the internal dialogue that shapes the architecture of destiny. Every word you speak to yourself, every narrative you accept, every belief you allow is an instrument in the orchestration of outcomes. Speaking to yourself with certainty, reinforcing purpose, reaffirming faith, and visualizing success with clarity is not mere self-talk, it is the deliberate engineering of reality. The mind obeys the strongest signal it receives. If you continually signal doubt, hesitation, or fear, you invite failure. If you continually signal certainty, purpose, and persistence, you command inevitability. Acting as if failure is impossible is the conscious, relentless management of this dialogue, shaping every moment of thought into a force that cannot be resisted. Persistence, discipline, imagination, faith, decision, emotional control, these are not separate skills. They are facets of a single law, the law of mental inevitability, the principle that governs whether a human mind produces results or succumbs to the fiction of failure. Every individual who has achieved extraordinary success understood and applied these laws, often unconsciously, often before they could articulate them. What distinguishes those who achieve from those who do not is the deliberate, conscious practice of aligning every thought, every emotion, and every action with the internal certainty that failure is impossible. Now consider the compounding effect of these forces when consistently applied. Each day of disciplined thought and decisive action is a brick laid in the foundation of unshakable success. Each repetition of purpose, each reinforcement of faith, Each controlled emotion, each visualization of inevitable achievement strengthens neural pathways, consolidates belief, and accelerates the manifestation of your objectives. This is the invisible architecture of achievement, the unseen scaffolding upon which extraordinary results are constructed. To act as if failure is impossible is to enter this domain, to labor daily in the quiet but inexorable construction of your destiny. But let us not delude ourselves. The path is not easy. The mental rigor required is absolute. Doubt will appear, resistance will rise, fear will beckon, the world will offer distractions, excuses, and argument. T.S. for retreat. The law of internal inevitability is relentless, but it demands reciprocity. If you permit yourself to falter, to compromise, to entertain the possibility of failure, even for a moment, the foundation cracks. Acting as if failure is impossible is not a temporary state. It is a permanent occupation of the mind, a deliberate, relentless alignment of thought, emotion, and action. It is a battlefield fought silently within, where victory is earned before it manifests outwardly. So feel this weight, this responsibility, this imperative. Recognize that the ordinary life, the life dominated by hesitation and fear, is a life surrendered to circumstance. The extraordinary life, the life of inevitability, is the life commanded by a mind disciplined, focused, and unwavering. Acting as if failure is impossible is the declaration that your mind, your desire, your faith, and your persistence are sovereign, that your internal world dictates the outcomes of the external, and that no obstacle, no criticism, no temporary defeat can breach the walls of certainty you have constructed. And here, in this quiet, unyielding commitment to mental mastery, the listener finds the first true taste of power, the realization that failure exists only where the mind permits it, that the only obstacles of substance are those you honor with attention, that inevitability is achieved when every thought, every emotion, every action is disciplined in alignment with an unshakable purpose. To act as if failure is impossible is to command reality, to seize your mind and to begin the silent conquest that will eventually render your external world obedient to the laws of your internal certainty. Now that desire has been ignited, faith has been strengthened, autosuggestion has begun to condition your mind, and persistence has forged your actions into relentless momentum, there remains one final silent adversary to conquer before failure can be rendered impossible: fear. Fear is not merely an emotion. It is a sophisticated signal, a whisper from the mind's primitive core, designed to prevent risk and safeguard comfort. But comfort is the graveyard of greatness, the silent killer of potential, the deceptive cradle of mediocrity. To act as if failure is impossible, you must learn to confront fear not with avoidance, but with relentless analysis and uncompromising mastery. Fear will always rise when the mind approaches uncharted territory, when desire pushes against inertia, when faith insists upon the unseen. The weak surrender, the hesitant flinch, the indecisive retreat. The strong confront it, dissect it, understand its origin, and convert it into a tool. Every fear, every trembling doubt, every anxious thought can be transformed into energy, into clarity, into action, but only if the mind refuses to grant it authority. Consider the nature of fear in its many forms: the fear of criticism, the fear of loss, the fear of embarrassment, the fear of poverty, the fear of death. Each is a subtle tyrant whispering that hesitation is safety, that surrender is rational, that inaction preserves existence. But rationality is often the enemy of greatness, and inaction is the silent partner of failure. Acting as if failure is impossible demands that every fear be confronted with the full weight of reason, reflection, and resolve. You must interrogate each fear. From where does it arise? What authority does it possess? What lie does it perpetuate? Once exposed, fear loses its power. Once confronted with absolute certainty of purpose, it is neutralized, transformed into a signpost rather than a barrier. Self-discipline, then, becomes the instrument of fear mastery. Desire without discipline is a flame easily extinguished. Faith without discipline is a fragile vessel. Autosuggestion without discipline is a whisper easily drowned. Persistence without discipline is a momentum easily diverted. Acting as if failure is impossible requires the cultivation of discipline so absolute that the mind, body, and emotion move as a single integrated force toward purpose, unshakable and unyielding. Discipline is the silent hand that directs every moment, that ensures each action, each thought, each response is aligned with inevitability. Without it, even the most vivid imagination, the most burning desire, the most fervent faith will dissipate in the turbulence of distraction and temptation. Discipline is the unseen architect of mastery, the invisible scaffolding that supports every act of greatness. Now reflect on purpose. Definiteness of purpose, the law Napoleon Hill emphasized as the foundation of achievement. Purpose is not vague ambition, it is not a fleeting goal or a whimsical desire. Purpose is a precise, unshakable, crystalline vision of what you will achieve, why it matters, and how it defines your life. Purpose channels desire, focuses imagination, sharpens decision, and fuels persistence. Without definiteness of purpose, the mind is a ship without a rudder, endlessly buffeted by circumstance, opinion, and indecision. But with it, the mind becomes a vessel of inevitability, guided by internal laws that leave no room for failure. Acting as if failure is impossible demands that purpose be clarified, reinforced, and internalized to the point where every thought and action is a reflection of it, where deviation becomes unthinkable, and where external resistance is irrelevant. Persistence, faith, discipline, imagination, and purpose are not isolated qualities. They are facets of a single integrated law of mental mastery. Together they generate an internal environment in which failure cannot exist. But to fully inhabit this state, one must understand the subtle interplay between thought and emotion, between conscious intent and subconscious obedience. The subconscious mind is the hidden engine of reality, the silent operator that executes commands regardless of circumstance. Fear, doubt, hesitation, indecision, and lack of clarity disrupt its operations. Desire, faith, discipline, purpose, and persistent action command it to act, to align, to create outcomes that mirror internal certainty. Acting as if failure is impossible is the deliberate harmonization of conscious will and subconscious execution, the orchestration of thought and emotion into a force that shapes reality itself. Now let us consider the subtle but critical role of mental visualization. Imagination, disciplined and purposeful, is the theater in which the impossible is rehearsed into certainty. You must see yourself acting, achieving, overcoming, and triumphing with unwavering conviction. Each scene played in your mind is a rehearsal for external reality. Each vivid image, reinforced with emotion and clarity, instructs the subconscious to generate pathways that lead inevitably to the outcome envisioned. Visualization is not daydreaming, it is deliberate mental engineering, the blueprint upon which reality is constructed. Acting as if failure is impossible requires that your mental images be so vivid, so detailed, so emotionally charged that the mind cannot distinguish rehearsal from reality, cannot entertain hesitation, and cannot allow fear to dictate behavior. Decision, once again, emerges as a decisive instrument. Indecision is the gateway through which failure enters. Acting decisively, without hesitation, with complete alignment of thought, emotion, and desire, signals to the subconscious that doubt is unacceptable and that only one outcome, success, is permitted. Each decision, once executed with full commitment, becomes a reinforcement of inevitability, a brick in the fortress of certainty that failure cannot breach. Acting as if failure is impossible is therefore a continuous exercise in decisiveness, executed daily, reinforced consistently, and integrated seamlessly into the fabric of every thought and action. Consider now the role of adversity, of setbacks, of resistance. These are not signals of inadequacy, nor are they evidence that failure is possible. They are tests, crucibles designed to refine purpose, to strengthen persistence, to deepen faith, and to sharpen the mind. The individual who acts as if failure is impossible sees obstacles not as threats, but as instruments of growth. Each resistance faced is an opportunity to rehearse mastery, to refine strategy, to fortify belief. The world tests all who dare to achieve, but the internally certain mind responds with precision, calm, and unwavering focus. Acting as if failure is impossible does not remove adversity, it transforms it into fuel for inevitable success. Emotional mastery, already hinted at, is equally critical. A mind ruled by impulse, by anger, by despair, or by impatience cannot act with certainty. Acting as if failure is impossible requires emotional equilibrium. Each emotional response is evaluated, corrected, and aligned with purpose. Every surge of fear is converted into insight, every spark of doubt is extinguished. Head by discipline, every frustration becomes a cue to refine approach. The individual who masters emotion commands internal stability, ensuring that the mental laws of inevitability operate unhindered, free from interference by transitory feelings or external provocation. Self-mastery, then, becomes the ultimate battlefield. Every thought is observed, every word monitored, every action disciplined. The internal world is constructed with meticulous attention, each component designed to reinforce the absolute certainty that failure is impossible. This is no superficial exercise. It is a profound psychological campaign, a silent war waged within the mind, where victories are accumulated in secrecy before they are ever revealed in the external world. Acting as if failure is impossible is the conscious occupation of this internal territory, the deliberate assertion of authority over every mental process, every emotional response, and every behavioral choice. Now, consider the rhythm of daily practice, the relentless rehearsal of inevitability. Each morning, each hour, each interaction is an opportunity to reinforce internal law. Affirmations, visualization, reflection, decisiveness, disciplined action, these are the instruments by which the mind is hardened, by which fear is neutralized, and by which purpose becomes a living, breathing force within. Acting as if failure is impossible is therefore not a state achieved once, but a continuous, deliberate, and unrelenting practice, a life lived with internal authority, precision, and alignment. The mastery of internal forces, desire, faith, persistence, purpose, discipline, decision, emotional control, and visualization constructs a reality in which failure has no foothold. The mind becomes a fortress, the subconscious a loyal executor, and every action an inevitable consequence of internal certainty. Those who achieve extraordinary results do so because they inhabit this state, not occasionally, not partially, but completely, consistently, and uncompromisingly. Acting as if failure is impossible is the conscious adoption of this law, the full and deliberate orchestration of mind, heart, and action toward a single unassailable outcome. And so you are called to recognize the ultimate truth. Failure exists only where the mind entertains it, only where fear is allowed to rise unchecked, only where discipline, persistence, purpose, and faith are insufficiently applied. To act as if failure is impossible is to occupy the mind with unassailable certainty, to enforce internal laws rigorously, to master every thought, every emotion, and every action, and to align all internal and external forces toward one inevitable result, success. Having mastered desire, faith, discipline, purpose, fear, and emotional equilibrium, you now face the ultimate challenge, the orchestration of all internal forces into deliberate strategic action. To act as if failure is impossible is not merely a mental exercise, it is a living practice, a continuous alignment of thought, emotion, and behavior toward inevitable achievement. The mind that has cultivated certainty, mastered fear, and disciplined itself in purpose must now translate these internal victories into tangible, relentless execution. Without action, all mental mastery remains a phantom, a possibility unfulfilled, a promise whispered to the void. Action is the arena in which the internal laws assert themselves over the external world. Each choice, each movement, each calculated risk is a declaration that failure has no authority here, that the mind has prepared, that the will has aligned, that the purpose is unshakable. Strategy becomes the visible manifestation of internal certainty. You must act with precision, guided not by convenience, by impulse, or by comfort, but by deliberate consideration of the most effective path to your objective. Every obstacle you anticipate is met not with panic or complaint, but with premeditated action. Every resistance is analyzed, every setback is leveraged, Every delay is transformed into insight. The individual who acts as if failure is impossible does not wander blindly. They plan, rehearse, visualize, and execute with unerring alignment between mental clarity and physical action. Each step is not random, it is deliberate, a calculated reinforcement of internal law. Decision once again emerges as the pivot upon which execution turns. Acting decisively, instantly, and irreversibly is the hallmark of one who has internalized the impossibility of failure. Indecision invites hesitation. Hesitation invites doubt. Doubt births retreat. When the mind moves decisively, fully aware of its purpose, fully immersed in desire, and fully equipped with disciplined faith, it transforms action into inevitability. You do not consult circumstance nor negotiate with opinion. You move knowing that the internal certainty you have cultivated will compel the universe to respond. In this decisive state, every motion, every effort, every initiative becomes a step along the preordained path of achievement. Imagination, too, becomes the laboratory of execution. Not a passive dream, not idle speculation, but active, rigorous mental engineering. You visualize potential outcomes, anticipate every obstacle, and design multiple contingencies for every scenario. You rehearse success not as an abstract hope, but as a precise pattern that the subconscious mind translates into instinctive action. Acting as if failure is impossible demands that imagination operate with discipline, rigor, and precision, shaping not only strategy, but the subtle interplay of timing, judgment, and initiative. Every imagined scenario becomes a rehearsal for reality, every mental rehearsal a reinforcement of inevitability. Persistence, already forged in the internal crucible, now finds expression in relentless execution. You advance regardless of resistance, regardless of delay, regardless of apparent defeat. Temporary setbacks are not failures but calibrations, signals that refine strategy and deepen understanding. Acting as if failure is impossible means that persistence is unyielding, automatic, and seamless. It is the natural expression of a mind that refuses to tolerate doubt, delay, or hesitation. The individual who embodies this principle does not pause for reflection on difficulty or obstacle. They move continuously, guided by the unshakable authority of internal certainty. Consider the orchestration of mental energy across all domains. Each thought must reinforce action, each emotion must sustain effort, each intention must guide behavior. Internal mastery is not fragmented, it is integrated. Thought, emotion, and action converge into a singular, unstoppable force. Acting as if failure is impossible is the conscious coordination of this triad, ensuring that the internal laws of desire, faith, discipline, and purpose operate in synchrony with external execution. The mind becomes a conductor, the body its orchestra, the universe the resonant chamber that echoes inevitability. Decision-making under pressure exemplifies the strength of internal certainty. The moment of choice is often when fear, doubt, and external pressure converge. The untrained mind hesitates, consults, and falters. The disciplined mind, however, executes instantly, drawing upon internal authority, previous rehearsal, and clarity of purpose. Acting as if failure is impossible means that every choice is a reinforcement of inevitability, every hesitation a breach in mental law, every decisive act a consolidation of control over reality. Now reflect on the role of deliberate focus. The human mind is capable of extraordinary achievements, but only when it concentrates on a single objective with unwavering intensity. Distraction, scattered effort, divided attention, all are allies of failure. To act as if failure is impossible, you must focus relentlessly, directing every resource, every skill, every ounce of energy toward the attainment of your defined purpose. Each day becomes a microcosm of execution, each hour an opportunity to reinforce the alignment between thought, emotion, and action. Focus is the lever that multiplies the impact of persistence, strategy, and imagination, transforming effort into inevitability. The silent power of preparation cannot be overstated. Those who appear to succeed effortlessly have, in reality, prepared relentlessly, rehearsed consistently, and refined their approach over countless unseen hours. Acting as if failure is impossible requires preparation not as a ritual, but as a deliberate strategic reinforcement of internal law. Each contingency planned, each scenario rehearsed, each skill honed, ensures that when the moment of execution arrives, the mind responds with the precision of inevitability. Preparation is the bridge between internal certainty and external manifestation. Without it, the mind's mastery is impotent in the arena of reality. Reflection to O is a critical instrument of mastery. After each action, each initiative, each effort, deliberate reflection allows you to analyze performance, refine strategy, and reinforce mental laws. Acting as if failure is impossible does not imply arrogance or blind persistence. It requires constant recalibration, continuous learning, and honest assessment. Each reflection reinforces internal authority, strengthens clarity of purpose, and consolidates the invisible forces that govern inevitable success. Now consider the power of selective association. Your mind, disciplined as it is, will still be influenced by external voices. Acting as if failure is impossible demands the cultivation of a mental environment aligned with internal law. Surround yourself with thought, with conversation, with energy that reinforces certainty, discipline, and purpose. Avoid the voices that whisper doubt, encourage compromise, or celebrate mediocrity. The external environment must be consciously aligned to sustain the internal law that failure is impossible, or it will erode the painstakingly constructed fortress of the mind. Decision, discipline, focus, persistence, imagination, reflection, and preparation converge in the orchestration of action. Acting as if failure is impossible is no longer an internal philosophy alone. It becomes a living, breathing strategy applied moment by moment. Each act reinforces mental certainty. Each choice consolidates internal law. Each movement manifests inevitable T comes. The individual who embodies this principle moves with rhythm, precision, and authority, transforming invisible mental mastery into tangible achievement. Consider the ultimate effect of this orchestration. The world perceives only results, the triumph, the mastery, the achievement. The silent observers cannot see the mental campaign waged within, the fear confronted and neutralized, the discipline reinforced, the desires clarified, the imagination exercised, the purpose crystallized. Yet it is precisely these internal victories that produce the external outcome. Acting as if failure is impossible is to conduct this hidden symphony, to synchronize thought, emotion, and action with absolute fidelity, and to compel reality to conform to the law of your mind. The integration of mental mastery into action, of discipline into strategy, of persistence into execution, of imagination into planning, is the pinnacle of internal conquest. At this level, hesitation has no place, fear has no authority, doubt has no foothold, and failure becomes not merely unlikely, but inconceivable. Each step, each act, each decision is a declaration of inevitability, an affirmation of internal law, a tangible manifestation of the invisible forces of desire, faith, discipline, purpose, persistence, and imagination. Acting as if failure is impossible is the culmination of mental, emotional, and strategic alignment, the living proof that mastery of the internal precedes command of the external. And T. Hat inevitability is the natural consequence of unyielding internal law. Having orchestrated thought, emotion, and action with precision, you now confront the final crucible before ultimate manifestation, the relentless testing of mental laws under pressure, the refinement of persistence, the exercise of faith, and the complete mastery of unseen forces that govern destiny. To act as if failure is impossible is to understand that inevitability is not proven in comfort or in calm. It is forged in the furnace of resistance, in the crucible of adversity, in the moments when hesitation whispers seductively, and when fear threatens to disrupt the harmony of purpose. Here, the internal laws of success are subjected to their greatest trial. The individual who acts with absolute certainty does not flinch. They respond with deliberation, decisiveness, and unshakable clarity, knowing that pressure is the instrument that reveals the depth of internal mastery. Persistence, refined in quiet rehearsal, now encounters the unpredictability of reality. Each obstacle, each delay, each act of resistance from the external world becomes a measure not of possibility, but of preparation, not of limitation, but of refinement. The mind that has been conditioned to act as if failure is impossible does not merely endure setbacks. It harnesses them. Each challenge is dissected, analyzed, and transformed into insight, strategy, and opportunity. Temporary defeat is not acknowledged as failure, it is triate. D is data, feedback, and a necessary calibration of action. The persistent mind, guided by internal certainty and unshakable purpose, moves continuously, converting resistance into momentum, hesitation into clarity, and adversity into a proving ground for inevitability. Decision emerges as the silent master of destiny. Indecision is the gateway through which failure infiltrates even the most disciplined mind. Acting decisively, instantly, and irreversibly is a declaration of internal law. The moment of choice is the battleground where desire, faith, and persistence are tested against fear, doubt, and external interference. Those who hesitate grant authority to circumstance. Those who decide command the outcome. Acting as if failure is impossible is to internalize this principle so completely that hesitation becomes unthinkable, and every decision becomes an affirmation of inevitability. Faith, reinforced through desire, visualization, and disciplined autosuggestion, now faces the ultimate test. The external world rarely aligns neatly with expectation. Delays, contradictions, setbacks, and opposition are inevitable. Yet faith, absolute and unshakable, transforms these apparent contradictions into instruments of refinement. Faith is not passive hope, it is active, disciplined certainty that commands the mind and aligns the subconscious with the outcome. To act as if failure is impossible is to practice this faith daily, to strengthen it with each rehearsal, to test it against adversity, and to internalize the knowledge that no external circumstance can contradict the certainty of a mind fully aligned with purpose. Imagination, sharpened and disciplined, continues its role as the laboratory of inevitability. Here, challenges are anticipated, strategies refined, and contingencies prepared. Each mental rehearsal strengthens neural pathways, aligns action with purpose, and converts potential obstacles into anticipated opportunities. Imagination is not escapism, it is preparation, anticipation, and rehearsal. Acting as if failure is impossible requires that every imagined scenario be detailed, precise, and emotionally charged, ensuring that the mind reacts to reality with the authority of one who has already conquered it. Emotional mastery reaches its apex in this crucible. Anger, despair, impatience, frustration, and fear are neutralized, redirected, or transformed into fuel for focused action. Emotional equilibrium is not merely desirable, it is essential. Acting as if failure is impossible demands that the mind move through pressure, resistance, and adversity with calm, controlled, unwavering focus. Each emotion becomes a resource, each reaction a calculated instrument in the orchestration of inevitability. Self-discipline, previously honed in preparation and rehearsal, now asserts itself with complete authority. Every thought is observed, every word scrutinized, every action measured against purpose. There is no room for compromise, hesitation, or indulgence. Acting as if failure is impossible is the continuous exercise of this authority, the deliberate occupation of the internal realm in which thought, emotion, and action are harmonized with absolute fidelity to purpose. Self-discipline is the silent engine that ensures internal laws translate flawlessly into external manifestation. Consider the unseen mental forces that govern all human achievement. The individual who understands these forces recognizes that thought precedes action, that belief precedes manifestation, that internal certainty precedes external reality. Acting as if failure is impossible is to align every mental, emotional, and behavioral pattern with these unseen forces, to orchestrate them with precision, and to compel reality to conform to the internal law. The external world is responsive to internal authority, resistance is temporary, delay is instructional, and every obstacle becomes a lever for refinement and acceleration toward the inevitable outcome. Decision, persistence, faith, imagination, discipline, emotional mastery, and understanding of invisible laws converge to create a mind that is impervious to failure. Every action taken is reinforced by mental certainty, every setback anticipated and neutralized, every obstacle converted into an instrument of advantage. Acting as if failure is impossible becomes a continuous practice, a daily rehearsal, a living reality in which the mind, body, and environment are aligned toward a single inevitable result. The individual becomes a conductor of forces, an orchestrator of destiny, a master of the internal laws that govern external outcomes. Now reflect on the compounding effect of consistent application. Each day, each hour, each decisive action, each rehearsal of internal law strengthens neural pathways, reinforces certainty, and accelerates the manifestation of purpose. Every moment of persistence, every disciplined response, every strategic initiative is a brick laid in the invisible fortress of inevitability. The mind, trained, disciplined, and rehearsed, becomes a machine of certainty, a force that the external world cannot resist, a living proof that failure is impossible where internal laws are absolute. The subtle but profound mastery of these forces is what distinguishes the extraordinary from the ordinary, the inevitable achiever from the passive dreamer. Acting as if failure is impossible is not arrogance, it is discipline, clarity, and relentless internal author. It is the deliberate construction of a mind in which hesitation has no entry, fear has no foothold, doubt is annihilated, and persistence is automatic. It is a life lived with such precision, such alignment, such internal harmony, that the external world must yield to inevitability. Finally, recognize that these principles are not theoretical. They are practical, observable, and reproducible by any individual willing to submit to the rigor of internal mastery. Desire, faith, autosuggestion, persistence, discipline, decision, emotional equilibrium, imagination, and understanding of invisible mental laws form an integrated system. To act as if failure is impossible is to operate this system continuously, consciously, and deliberately converting internal victory into external reality. The external world reflects the internal state. There is no exception, there is no compromise. The mind that acts with absolute certainty commands outcomes. The mind that hesitates invites failure. Now, after traversing the landscape of desire, faith, discipline, persistence, imagination, decision, and mastery over fear and emotion, you stand at the threshold where internal mastery meets external reality. The question you must ask yourself is no longer theoretical. Will you claim this power? Will you seize this certainty? Or will you retreat into the comfortable illusion that failure has authority over you? Acting as if failure is impossible is not a suggestion. It is a law that must be lived. Enforced and embodied in every breath, every thought, every choice, every action. The time for hesitation has passed. The moment for decisive, unwavering commitment is now. You are called to inhabit the fortress of your mind with absolute authority, to govern every thought, to command every emotion, to direct every action with precision and certainty. Imagine for a moment the alternative. Consider a life surrendered to indecision, to fear, to half-hearted attempts, to the silent whisper that failure is real, that life is predictable, it is ordinary, it is a life dictated by circumstance, by the opinions of others, by fleeting conditions of comfort or resistance. It is the life of the passive, the tentative, the compromised. Now feel the weight of contrast. The mind that acts as if failure is impossible does not ask for permission, does not wait for signals, does not falter. It moves with inexorable certainty, guided by desire, reinforced by faith, disciplined by habit, and animated by the invisible forces that govern all outcomes. It transforms obstacles into instruments, delay into rehearsal, opposition into refinement. It bends circumstance to its will. It commands destiny, not through luck or chance, but through the absolute mastery of thought and action. This is not metaphor, this is law. The mind that internalizes failure as impossible becomes a living engine of inevitability. Every decision, every act, every rehearsal of mental law compounds, reinforcing certi, NTI, accelerating manifestation, and eliminating the possibility of retreat. Acting as if failure impossible is the deliberate occupation of the internal world in such a manner that the external world is compelled to yield. You cannot stumble, for every action is calculated. You cannot falter, for every fear is mastered. You cannot retreat, for persistence is automatic, relentless, and unshakable. This is the apex of human mastery, the culmination of all laws Napoleon Hill articulated, desire fused with purpose, faith refined through autosuggestion, imagination disciplined with clarity, decision exercised without hesitation, persistence applied relentlessly, emotion mastered, and self-discipline absolute. But there is one final truth you must confront, one final commitment you must make. Internal mastery demands external execution. To act as if failure is impossible is to move into life with complete authority, leaving no room for compromise. You cannot act with half measures. You cannot indulge doubt. You cannot negotiate with fear. Every thought, every word, every movement, every choice must reinforce your certainty. You are the commander of your mind, the architect of your destiny, the executor of invisible laws that govern all outcomes. The external world will reflect precisely what you have cultivated internally. To delay, to waver, to hesitate is to allow the fiction of failure to intrude. To act decisively, relentlessly, unflinchingly is to render failure impossible. Consider the responsibility that comes with this understanding. To act as if failure is impossible is not merely a personal victory, it is a claim upon life itself. The mind that embraces this law must accept the burden of total responsibility. No circumstance, no other person, no misfortune can dictate outcome. There is no blame, no excuses, no deflection. The individual who internalizes this principle owns every moment, every decision, every outcome. They are accountable first to themselves, then to the law of inevitability that governs their thought, and finally to the universe that responds without delay to the authority of certainty. Now, feel the weight, the urgency, the gravity of this truth. You have the power to act as if failure is impossible, but power is meaningless without execution. You have cultivated desire, but desire unexpressed is inert. You have rehearsed faith, but faith untested is fragile. You have disciplined thought, but discipline without action is impotent. You have confronted fear, but fear ignored without confrontation endures. You have envisioned strategy, rehearsed outcomes, and prepared contingencies, but the moment of execution remains. The mind that acts as if failure is impossible does not wait, it does not hesitate, it does not seek validation. It acts now, relentlessly, decisively, absolutely. Let this moment now be the turning point. Imagine yourself moving through life with the unshakable certainty that failure is impossible. Feel your mind sharpen, your emotions stabilize, your focus condense. Every fear you encounter is neutralized, every obstacle anticipated, every setback converted into fuel. You move with purpose, with authority, with inevitability. The universe may test, but it cannot defeat. Circumstance may resist, but it cannot prevail. Every action, every decision, every movement reinforces the internal law you have claimed. Success is no longer a hope, it is an inevitability. Failure is no longer a possibility, it is an impossibility. Now, take total ownership. Commit yourself fully to the discipline, the mastery, and the execution of this law. Commit to a life in which every thought, every decision, every action serves the singular purpose of rendering failure impossible. No compromise, no hesitation, no retreat. The internal laws are yours to command, the external world will obey. Persist until mastery is absolute, until certainty dominates every fiber of your being, until the invisible forces that govern all outcomes are aligned perfectly with your purpose. This is the summit of human potential. This is the power of acting as if failure is impossible. Finally, move. Move decisively. Move relentlessly. Move with the authority of one who knows that failure cannot exist in their mind. Take full responsibility for your life, for your actions, for your purpose, and for your destiny. Let every thought, every emotion, every action reinforce the law of inevitability you have internalized. Declare it with your mind, embody it with your body, enforce it with your will. Act as if failure is impossible, and you will discover that the world, circumstances, and even time itself yield to the certainty of internal mastery. The moment is now. The choice is absolute. Act relentlessly without compromise and claim the life that is rightfully inevitable.